This leaked audio recording from the submarine Aurora was the last thing Dr. Evelyn heard before she disappeared. The Atlantic Ocean stretched like a black mirror beneath a starless sky, silent and heavy. In its depths lay the wreckage of the Titanic, an eternal testament to a cold night a century ago. It was said the silence of the deep was not true silence, but filled with whispers, the whispers of souls yet to find eternal rest. But the whispers were far older and more malevolent than humanity had ever imagined. Ancient nautical charts, whispers from forgotten Phoenician and Viking sagas, spoke of Leviathan, a deep-sea entity, a slumbering horror that awoke with every great tremor in the ocean's floor, a cataclysm like the Titanic's tragic end. Dr. Evelyn Reed, an oceanographer and marine anthropologist, was obsessed with the Titanic. Her interest wasn't purely academic. Her great-grandfather, one of the ship's engineers, had spent his final years muttering about voices from beneath the waves before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. He'd left behind cryptic notes hinting that the Titanic hadn't struck an iceberg, but a body vast beyond comprehension, a massive claw or horn of eternal darkness. Evelyn was part of a secret, privately funded research expedition, using a highly advanced submersible to study the Titanic wreck in unprecedented detail. This mission focused not just on engineering, but on the anomalous acoustic phenomena detected around the wreck, and why the iceberg explanation never fully added up. On their third day in the abyss, as the submersible reached the wreck site, Evelyn felt a knot in her stomach. The scene was both majestic and horrifying. A colossal, fractured vessel, its spectral remains standing defiant in eternal darkness. The air inside the submersible grew strangely cold. Despite its perfect environmental systems, Evelyn instinctively clutched the antique compass her great-grandfather had always carried, now strapped to her wrist. The submersible's acoustic sensors began picking up signals. At first, they were faint distortions, then transformed into complex, unnatural sound patterns. Mark, the sound engineer, tried to filter out the noise, but quickly realized it wasn't static. "It's not a malfunction, Dr. Reed. These are complex sonic patterns. They sound like human voices, distorted, but human," Mark said, his voice trembling. As Mark spoke, Evelyn heard her own voice in her ear, but rougher and deeper. "Don't look at the window, Evelyn. Whoever hears the whispers is pulled to the depths." The voices grew clearer. There were multiple whispers, mixed with muffled screams and desperate pleas. Some seemed to emanate from within the submersible itself, piercing its thick steel hull. Evelyn closed her eyes, hearing her great-grandfather's voice whisper, "It's waking, Evelyn, the entity." Then a woman's voice whispered, "Anne." "Anne," a child cried, and a man screamed, "The water, it's cold." Evelyn turned to the submersible's external cameras, their powerful lights cutting through the abyssal blackness. The cameras transmitted clear images of the rusted hull. As she watched, something made her heart stop. Faint shadows moved between the shattered doorways and broken windows of the ship. These weren't mere optical illusions. They moved with human-like gestures, as if performing an eternal dance of death. For a moment, one of the shadows seemed to turn towards the camera, and glowing, cold blue eyes appeared in the absolute darkness. Staring directly at her, she remembered her great-grandfather's tales of eyes emerging from the abyss. In a fleeting glimpse, she saw her great-grandfather's translucent shadow standing beside those eyes on the wreck, waving desperately, As he gestured, a cold dread washed over her as she noticed strange calcified circular patterns beginning to form on her exposed skin, particularly on her forearms, pulsating faintly with a blue glow. The submersible's internal clock flickered violently, then solidified, displaying April 14th, 1912, 11:40 p.m. In an attempt to understand the phenomena, Evelyn directed the team to guide the submersible towards the collapsed bridge. The area was even darker and colder. As the submersible moved, communication with Mark suddenly cut off. Evelyn spun around to see his seat empty on the sonar screen. A rapid red blotch faded into the depths, like a dissipating bloom of blood. Amidst the wreckage, they found a tightly sealed wooden box that seemed to have withstood the destruction. Inside there was a journal belonging to the Titanic's captain, Captain Edward Smith. Evelyn began to read initially. The journal described a routine voyage, the joy of the passengers, and the captain's pride in his ship. But the final pages were terrifying. Smith wrote of a voice he began to hear in the voyage's last days, a voice of calls from the deep that no one else could hear. He described how the ship was irresistibly drawn towards something, and how the voice became clearer, revealing an endless hunger. On the night of the disaster, Smith didn't mention an iceberg, but wrote, "We struck something massive, something not of this world, a body vast beyond description, a gigantic claw, or a horn of eternal darkness." This entity had fed on the passengers' fear, pulling the ship to its doom. On the final page, just before sinking, he wrote, "It was no iceberg. It was a summons. The abyss itself opened its maw. I will not be the last. I have fed it." A strange drawing accompanied the text, a ship sinking into a colossal mouth extending from the ocean's darkness, with glowing blue eyes filling the maw. As Evelyn read, all the submersible's internal lights suddenly went out, and communication with the surface ceased. She felt a cold touch on her arm. She turned to see the transparent apparition of Captain Smith standing beside her, his face pale and desperate. "I warned, and they did not listen." Smith's voice whispered, filled with sorrow. Smith's trembling hand pointed towards the main viewport, to a deeper point in the ocean, where a faint, unnatural blue glow emanated from a colossal, previously undiscovered chasm, to the source of the voices. Smith whispered, then vanished. On the submersible's front viewport, words began to form in the condensed mist, as if written from outside, "Join U.S." The whispers and screams now surged into a single, deafening chorus filling the submersible's interior. Evelyn felt the submersible's walls constricting around her, and the oxygen dwindling. She began to see pale faces appearing on the submersible's glass walls. Staring at her with empty, despair-filled eyes, these faces were not merely trapped souls, but were fragments of the entity itself, mimicking the voices and visages of the victims to lure new prey and feed on their memories. Evelyn felt her own memories begin to fade. She could no longer clearly recall her great-grandfather's name, nor the reason she had come here. The abyss was slowly consuming her mind. The submersible began to move slowly, as if an unseen force was pulling it towards the chasm Captain Smith had indicated. The control panel was frozen, and screams emanated from it. There was no one left to stop it. As the submersible approached the chasm, the blue light intensified, and the voices swelled. Evelyn realized this was not merely a place of shipwreck, but the maw of the eternal entity swallowing ships, souls, and memories alike. This entity was pulling not only the ship, but the souls, and now it was pulling her too. The last thing Evelyn saw before everything cut out was a clear image of her own face, reflected on the submersible's front glass, her eyes suddenly glowing with a faint blue light, just like the spectral eyes she had seen on the Titanic, then her face slowly distorting, as if merging with the deep blue darkness. In the fading moments of consciousness, she heard a voice say, "Welcome to our depths, Evelyn. Your memory is ours now." Above the ocean's surface, Mission Control lost contact with the submersible. After days of desperate waiting, the expedition was declared missing. The Titanic and its wreckage held another secret. Months later, a new expedition, ostensibly scientific, but with deeper, covert objectives, was launched by an undisclosed government. The new submersible, the Seraph, descended into the depths weeks later. It located the missing submersible, Aurora, on the ocean floor. It was sealed tightly from the inside, and its exterior bore deep, strange scratch marks, as if something massive had tried to break in or out. When they tried to contact the submersible, they received only static, but then a woman's voice clearly whispered over the radio, "You're next." It was followed by a faint child's giggle that faded into an echo of desperate screams. Evelyn hadn't merely become a spectral whisper. She had become a new guardian of the abyss's secret awaiting future visitors, perhaps even a part of the entity itself. Leaked documents later revealed that the government had knowledge of the deep entity and had been sacrificing researchers to appease it or study it, in a desperate attempt to understand something older and greater than humanity. And the abyss, it continued its eternal hunger. On a cold winter night, a satellite image showed the Titanic's location. The surrounding ocean appeared dark and ordinary, but in the heart of the abyss, specifically above the wreck site, a faint blue dot flickered intermittently, like a giant eye staring into the sky, then slowly vanished into the ocean's deep darkness. As the blue dot fades, a massive, pulsating blue glow appeared to pulse from within the Titanic's wreckage itself, a silent heartbeat in the crushing depths